and hopefully he join us soon. So welcome everybody to this open panel discussion about the new ISO22359, this standard for hardened protective shelters. Our target in this webinar is to expose this initiative about this international standard and to discuss about where the standard is heading to, what is the work group doing, and have some open discussion also with your participants to raise different questions and different issues and difficulties in such standard. So before we start to talk about the standard itself, as I usually do, a word from our sponsors. And as we all know, I work for Temet, and Temet is obviously sponsoring this. So this is our new website, and I want to share with everybody.
Finland is a small country on the border of West and East. The trials and hardships of World War II took a momentous toll on the people of Finland. Since then, we Finns have held preparedness, protection, and self-reliance in high regard. Nearly 70 years of experience in blast-proof shelter protection, market leader in Finland. Countless hours of test work have led us to be the company that Finnish people, governments with top-secret projects, and customers in more than 85 countries count on. We serve oil production plants, nuclear power plants, private customers, and many others thanks to our product variety.
We create.
For more extreme conditions, we've created automated and advanced technology, such as fully regenerative CO2 removal system, and we're constantly innovating for new solutions.
We deliver what we promise.
The key to a successful project lies in the skill and experience of our design team. We offer customized solutions to the varied needs of our customers and full customer support during and after the process. Our in-house production, with highly skilled people, is constantly preparing parts for both stock products and further customization. This ensures a fast and reliable delivery to meet the demands of our global market. When it's time to build, we are there to make sure all goes perfectly and on time. We are the partner that provides full service with Finnish top quality and decades of experience. We are saving lives. We are Temet.
Okay, so you're all welcome to check out our new website as well. Let me start by introducing myself. First of all, welcome Pertti as well joined us.
Thank you.
As most of you know me already, my name is Guy Ziman. I'm the CBDO of Temet Group, Chief Business Development Officer. And this is one of the initiatives that we pushed to expose this new standard to everybody. Temet is going through a lot of changes in the recent times. One of the changes is we changed our mission, and you can see it also on the website. And there you go. And one of the mission that we established is to saving lives, period. That is our mission. We want to help save life in any way. It's going through to all our personnel, from the factory workers to the sales, development, or any other employee of the company. I think this standard and this initiative is contributing to this effort very much. Temet is one of the leading manufacturer and developer of shelter equipment, the holistic or the complete line of product for shelters, including doors, valves, filtration system, regenerative CO2 removal system, shock isolators, and others. Everything that you require for your shelter, to build a shelter, to maintain a shelter, we can deliver. We also support greatly in the design stage. And I think this is a very important point to make up to those who know us less than others. We support long before the project start. In all the design stage, we provide different CAD files and different kind of consultation to make sure that the project is designed properly, easily, and the end result will be saving lives, as we said. Temet has delivered to more than 85 countries. We are almost at our 70th year of experience. As you might know, in Finland, the standard was established in 1958, requiring shelters to be built to protect citizens. At the moment, Finland has about 50,000 shelters protecting a little bit over 4 million people. And this is why this standard is so important for Finland, and we believe in this greatly. Once again, a few more updates about Temet. The group structure have changed, as you all know about. Maybe you know about the merge of Vajesto Group, and now we change our name to. We have one Temet. We have the Temet Group. Below that, we have Temet International, who work for the international market. We have Temet Finland for the domestic market, Temet Services, Temet Construction, and other subsidiaries. But we are all one Temet, working together and to support you. We have a new chairman, Ari Antonen. I thought he would join us, but he's not here at the moment. Maybe he will say a few words later. And we are asking you to join us, sign up for the newsletter or follow us on LinkedIn, as we plan to release new products and to make different announcements, more webinars and more activities to strengthen the civil defense worldwide. Okay, today's schedule. Let me say a little bit about what we're planning to do. The first 15 minutes will be a little bit explanation by Pertti Voigt about the work group and the standard and this whole process and where is it heading and where are we at now, who is participating, etc. Then we'll have a panel discussion with Jyrki Ronkainen, Peter Neuer from JCBRN Center of Excellency, and we'll discuss about the standard, the different questions, and so on. And when this panel will be over, will be open for questions from you as the audience. You're welcome to either write your question or raise your hand, and I will give you permission to make the question and unmute you and join the discussion, voice your opinion, and contribute to this effort. I hope we'll have an interesting session, and please follow us for the future additional sessions soon. Okay, our first speaker today is Mr. Pertti Voigt. Mr. Pertti Voigt is an experienced defense and security industry professional with wide experience in international sales, marketing, and business development. He has got more than 40 years of business experience in a broad range of innovation-driven industries. He is currently works as a CEO at Voigt Consulting, a Helsinki-based advisory firm with focus on providing consulting services to the industry, national public authorities, and the research community, including EU-funded researchers. During his career, Pertti has held management, sales, marketing, and business development position, and been acting as a chairman, director, and strategic advisor for several companies in the security and defense industry domain. in Finland and abroad. Pertti has also participated in several European and national research development projects, and I think he can also held several positions of trust at various organizations such as AFDA, the Association of Finnish Defense and Aerospace Industries, ASD, the Association of Aerospace and Defense Industries, and being the chairman of the board of the Security Innovation Program of Business Finland. He has special interest towards standardization, act as a chairman of 2 Finnish national mirror committees, following up and participating in the work of standardization committees at CEN, Senelec, ISO, and IEC. Today, Pertti acts as a chairman of Senelec's Sector Forum for Security, which coordinates the European security-related standardization. He also acts as a convener of Working Group 10 Preparedness at ISO for the security and resilience standard, and this is the standard we are talking about today. So to you, Pertti, and I think why don't you start by explaining to us what is the Senelec Forum as, and what is your role in there? One second, you are still on mute.
No, I'm not muted anymore.
Yes.
So good afternoon or good morning or evening, whatever time zone you are living. It's an afternoon here in Finland. The sun is soon setting, so darkness comes again. Thank you very much for your kind presentation, Guy. I'm really happy to be able to explain to you what we have started to do for standardization of shelters. But maybe if I got a little bit time here, it seems I do, I could, for those who are not familiar with the standardization domain and the standardization processes, I could give you a 3-minute, 4-minute explanation how it's done. Guy, could you give me the right to share?
I think you do.
I don't. It says only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
I think you went in through the wrong link, that not the right that I sent, and I'm checking how I can do that. I will try to do this.
I can check in again, no problem.
Do you want to send me something that I will share maybe, or?
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, hold on. I made it. Go ahead.
I'll send you an email.
No, now you have the right to share.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Working well.
Working well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you a very short introduction to standardization. Standards are actually a very old thing. Already thousands of years ago, there were certain standards which were used, for example, for measurements of goods that were sold against money, and this has gone further through the ages. I guess for most of us, if you think what would be a best example of standardization, they are the bolts and screws, so that the screw has to go inside the bolt when you turn it, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't work. And therefore the international standardization probably started really on defining the windings of a screw, so to be able to fix it to a bolt. You can see my screen. Let me tell you shortly how the standardization world works. There are 3 levels. The bottom level, you can see boxes which are called NSB, that means National Standardization Body. In every country there is one or several national standardization bodies, and these bodies are then responsible for mostly everything related to standardization in their respective countries. I think very much known are, for example, DIN, the German DIN, the British BSI, and so on. And these national standardization bodies, they are, as I said, they are responsible, but they are also then members in international and regional, in our case here in Europe, it's European standardization. So these national bodies, they are members in ISO, IEC, or ITU, or all of them. ISO is for general standardization, IEC is for electrical and electronic standardization, ITU is for telecommunication. And similarly, on the European level, there are 3 organizations, the European standards organizations called CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI. And here also CEN is general standardization, CENELEC electronic and electric standardization, and ETSI is telecommunication. And now these members of these national members of these international and European organizations, they are the ones who decide which standards will be written, and so these both international and European level, the standardization bodies, the organizations, they are divided in hundreds of technical committees, and each technical committee is then concentrating on one topic. And in our case, when we talk about the work of Temet and when we talk about this new standard we are discussing today, there are 2 committees. One is an international one. It's called ISO22359 for security and resilience is the name of the committee. And on the European level, there is committee CEN TC391, which is called Societal and Citizen Security. And these national standardization bodies in each country, they are members of these committees. They send delegates to the committee meetings to represent their own countries, and they also send experts to these committees and working groups who then work for standards, for single standards. Then the interesting question is who are then the national standardization bodies? Usually it's done so that in every national body there is a mirror committee that follows up the work on international and European level, and the members of these mirror committees, they represent the actual users of standards. That means the industry, the research domain, the practitioners, the first responders, the law enforcement agencies, the national authorities, policymakers, and so on. So those organizations who really need the standards and use them, they are also the ones that decide which standards will be built and which standards will then be published. Everything is done through voting, so that there is a majority of the member states are needed for approval of a new work item, and then when the new work item is finished, when the standard is ready for publication, again it will be voted, and then if the member states think that yes, this is a good standard, then it will be published as a standard. So this is simply how it happens. There are a lot of rules in standardization, but that is of course clear if you talk about organizations where hundreds of countries do thousands or tens of thousands of standards. So it has to be very, very clearly and regulated in detail so that everything runs smoothly, and so this is very shortly a few words about standards. What is a standard? What are the basic properties of a standard? So firstly, a standard is voluntary. So the standards normally are not mandatory, unless in some few cases yes, but principally it's up to the user if one wants to follow a standard or not. A screw manufacturer could develop his own windings. Well, probably he would not sell very many screws because they would not fit the bolts. But up to the manufacturer. And same applies also to other standards. There are a few standards which are mandatory, but not because they would have been done as mandatory standards, but because there is some legislation who refers to these standards, and so they must be then taken into account. Typical examples, for example, here in European Union is two standards. One is called low voltage. Oh, I can't remember the exact name, but the standards that describe safety requirements for home appliances, lights, lamps, anything electric, and these are mandatory. So they must be always, any product that is brought onto the market so must follow these standards, and then they will be certified and they will be stamped with in Europe it's called the EC or the CE marking. Okay, so this was a very short introduction to standardization. If you have any questions, I will be very glad after that to talk about. Guy, you asked about Sen and you asked about ISO. So Finland and where Temet operates is the Finnish Standards Association is a member in both organizations, and that's why also this Temet has been able to propose this new standard for hardened protective shelters. And the reason why ISO was selected for the platform for the new standard was the fact that Temet is an international global company, and a European standard would only be applicable in Europe. So
we will keep the questions for the last session.
For the last
session. But I would appreciate if you can tell us a little bit about the current process of this standard that we're here to talk about, and what is the work group, who are the participants,
yes,
and what is the schedule, and etc.
Okay, I will give you a short explanation. The standard proposal was submitted to ISO, International Standards Organization, in the spring, late spring, and then it was allocated to this technical committee, TC291. The secretariat and chairperson of this committee is in Sweden. The Swedish Standard Association takes care of that work, and then it was brought to a ballot, a voting, and there were only two nations that voted against this new proposal, so it was approved with a very clear majority. And after that, a call was sent to the member states, to the member organization, national ones, and this call was for nomination of experts to this working group. And quite yes, a few nations did indeed nominate experts, and at the moment we have in the list we have 16 persons who are now working with us to create these standards, and they represent altogether I think 6 or 7 countries. And we expect that now when the work has been started, and we will have some positive kind of it will be the information about this new working group is disseminated all around the world. So we hope that that some other nations also decide to send experts to this work. And as said, we had our first meeting this week on Monday, and the schedule is such that now we have 1 year, max 1 year time to draft a committee draft, which then will be sent to comments. It will be sent to comments to all national standardization bodies. And these national standardization bodies also then have a public inquiry. That means that the information about this new standard proposal will be posted on the website of the standardization bodies, and in some cases in some countries they have their own ways of making them public. I don't know exactly, but anyway, so they will be public, and anybody, just someone from the street, is able to comment on these if one wishes. And then after the commenting, so the working group that will be in the fall 22, the working group will receive the comments, and then every comment will be answered, and if we see it feasible, so we will take the comment into account and maybe change the standard proposal a bit, and after that there will be voting, which will be organized by ISO. And again, all national standardization bodies who are members of this committee can vote. And we hope that, of course, that the standard will be approved. And then when it has been approved, so the next steps then are translation. The ISO standards are they are usually written in English, and then they are translated into French and Russian automatically. And then, of course, any national standardization body can translate the standards into their own national languages. For example, here in Finland, we translate quite a few standards annually, which are then in Finnish, meaning that it's easier to use for anybody who maybe doesn't have a decent command of English or one of the other languages. So and this all should be over on the latest deadline day is the 8th of October 2023, and then the standard should be published. And of course, our aim is in this working group to work fast, especially now in the beginning, so that hopefully we could even be ready before the set deadline date. So, but that depends on very many things. Standardization work is very much based on the idea of consensus. So in these working groups, normally there is no voting. So either this or this. So always a consensus where a solution that can be accepted by all participants, all members, is looked for. Of course, in case there are some problems that the consensus cannot be reached, then it will be escalated and some other actions will be activated. But I'm quite sure we have a nice group. I must say, after having had this first meeting, and it seems to me that there is a very strong will in the working group to create a good standard. And we discussed, for example, in the first meeting, the scope of the standard, and it seemed to me, and it was also so that everybody was supporting the ideas that were presented by the or in the proposal. So now
So
we
if
will
I
have,
understand correctly, the schedule is that within a year time, a draft will be ready.
yes,
And then hopefully within, this is the deadlines, maybe even earlier, and then a year after it should be published.
it should be published, and it will take some time because there are always a few months reserved for the comments, and then another few months for the voting, and then of course it has to be translated and then finalized and put into a printing format, and then but 2 years is actually quite a short time.
Okay.
Thinking that we have been so many tens of years without any standards. So if we now know that in 2 years we will have a standard describing the designing and construction, the use and maintenance of hardened protective shelters. So I think it's a good step forward in this business.
Very good.
Good.
Great. Thank you very much for this recap. As I saw, we have others that just joined us. Let me say a little bit about our schedule. Again, we are now going to have some open discussion, open panel discussion, and I'm going to introduce our 2 other speakers. Perty, you're still sharing your screen, if you would like to stop that. And after that, we will have question and answers from you as the audience. If you would like to ask a question, you can either write it in the chat or raise your hand, and then I will give you the opportunity to speak and voice your opinion yourself. We have people joined us all the way from Korea, Vietnam, India, and Asia over there, all over Europe. And even we had somebody from the West Coast. I didn't see his name in right now online, but maybe he didn't wake up yet, but he did sign up to join us from Karagozian and Case. Okay, so let me introduce our next speakers. Mr. Jyrki Ronkainen, which most of you know. Jyrki was in Temet for many years, from production, R&D, CEO, board member, and now he's senior advisor to the board. He is a refined business executive with decades of experience in production and manufacturing industry, gained by working numerous missions from plant floor to CEO and board member position at Temet Oil. Jyrki has a broad understanding in research and development and sales and marketing of highly specialized technology in the global market. A combination of working experience in technical, commercial, and management positions enables him a comprehensive grasp of business processes in industrial enterprise. Jyrki has received his master's degrees in mechanical engineering from the Helsinki University of Technology, today known as Aalto University, and I think we have also a guest here from Aalto University. And his current role, as I said, is a senior advisor to Temet, among many other things that he does. He's a great resource, and it's always a pleasure to have a discussion with him, and I hope it will be the same today. Joining us as well from JCBRN Center of Excellency is Lieutenant Colonel Peter Neuer. Lieutenant Colonel Neuer is a CBRN Defense Capability and Defense Planning Specialist, Defense Capabilities and Defense Planning Section, Transformation Support Department of the JCBRN Defense Center of Excellence in the Czech Republic. Lieutenant Neuer is Lieutenant Colonel. Neuer is participates in supporting acting transformation and ACO in the NATO defense planning process in the field of CBRN defense. He's a member of the Physical Protection Panel of the NATO Joint CBRN Defense Capability Development Group, and he holds a Bachelor of Chemistry, Master of Chemistry from the military university in Czech Republic. Lieutenant Colonel Neuer, did I get it right so far?
Yeah, thank you for your introduction. I'd like to say that JCBR and COE, of course, you can find it in the web pages, and you can find more about our work, about our intent. I would like to say that as a member of physical protection panel and joint capability group, I'm working even in collective protection standard, which is just now is in the process of approval and modernization and standardization and approval. So I mean that my experience from the past could be successful or could be helpful for a new ICO program or ICO document. Thank you.
I think the JCBRN work as well is very much related to the standard, because you work on the connection between the civilian side and the military side of the CBRN defense.
Nowadays, it is, yes, you're definitely right. Just now is more connectivity and more cooperation between civilian and military part of our work. Just is increasing role of military within the civilian life. So I mean that it would be beneficial for both sides to be participating in this work.
Thank you. Okay, Jyrki, would you like to add anything before I start with the round of questions?
No, I don't think so. I guess the questions will come up, here and during this discussion, and they can be full well addressed, during this session.
So let me start with my first question to the panel, and I think you can all pick up the answer at any order that you would like. What, in your view, is the importance of this standard, and what need do you see that the standard will fulfill?
Well, if I may start this discussion, I could say that the fact is that there is no international standards existing describing or giving any guidelines to the protective shelters. There are, however, detailed technical specifications which are like national standards or client-specific requirements, but they are definitely not applicable as any kind of general guidelines. And unfortunately, sometimes they are not applicable at all, because they are created by let's say, people who may not always be so well versed in this business at all. So there's really, we have recognized a need for guidelines, particularly in design, construction, usage or operation, and maintenance of hardened protective shelters. And those guidelines would be serving the many stakeholders in the very wide value chain of people and functions who deal with protection of human lives and important assets and important functions. And the actual goal with this new standard is to bring about better designed and built hardened protective shelters and thus enhance the capabilities of various organizations in planning their operation and maintenance. That's the background. That's the story behind this. The simple fact that there is no standard. We are not creating any competitive standard to any existing any existing standard. And we are not creating technical specifications for shelters, but guidelines. That's something to keep in mind at all times.
That's a very, very important point that to make about this new standard, that it's not a specification, but it's a guideline. And that is, I think, very important. And then each state or each country will require to add their own specification if they require so. Pertti and Peter, would you like to add anything on this question? You're on mute again.
All right. Sorry about being muted. Yes, additionally to what Jyrki said, so I just want to emphasize one of the most important purposes of standards in general, and the thing is that standards open markets. So the international markets, if there are only national regulations, national standards, and national ways to operate and procedures, so then international trade has problems because then the manufacturers and anybody or any organization involved in trade has to modify the products and services so that they fit the national regulation in certain countries. And now, if the design of a system, in this case equipment for a hardened protective shelter, is designed according to a standard, and then on the other hand, the countries, the nations, they adopt also the standard and adapt their legislation according to the standard. That means that then it opens the market so that the products, the systems are automatically eligible for to be imported to a certain country. So standards do open markets, and standards also, that means that standards help competition, so that standards are best way to avoid monopolies and this kind of oligarchic businesses. So standards make it possible for companies from other countries to export.
I fully agree. Mr. Neuer, anything to add?
Very shortly, NATO Standardization Organization has one important motto, which calls "Be wise, standardize." And I think that it is very important for everybody, you know, as was mentioned by Pertti, that the standard is something like nothing mandatory. Every country can follow the standard, but it is not mandatory. But it is, as was mentioned just now, it is very important to avoid some oligarchic and, let's say, postulates how to let's say, avoid some mistakes from the first side, and from the second side, avoid some, say, yes, monopolist, something like that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I can share from the business side or the practical side that sometimes you see specification which is quite obvious to anyone who understand and experienced in our market, that these were specification written over specification and over specification, and every time somebody took all specification and added another thing and another thing and another layer, because there was no standard and there was nothing to base it on. So eventually you have a very complicated specification which are not, can be contradicting even in some cases. And that can be problematic for a project progress flow. And also, I think that many are afraid to go and make the shelter project if they don't know what to base it on, and they're afraid that it will not be in the good quality and they will be wasting their money. And if they have some kind of a standard, that will help them as well. I'm sorry if you can hear the noise, but there is some renovation that started 5 minutes ago in my building. So I'm sorry if that's bothering everybody. My next question for you guys is what are the obstacles that you expect for such standard in the countries? And I think that the best way that we will have answers to the question is by just jump in if you have anything to say, and go ahead and continue.
Well, can I begin again from my side? I guess I could see, well, this is my personal view, that the obstacles might be this requirement of the consensus, that everybody has to agree at every dot and comma on the final standard. So we can see that this big bureaucracy that is involved in this, writing up the standard might be some sort of hindrance at least. So it's I'm hoping that it will not become a horse designed by a committee, which is a camel. So it's that's my concern. But other than that, you know, we should have all the technical knowledge and technical understanding within this group to be able to create the standard. So I don't see any technical obstacles that could hamper or hinder the preparing of the standard. But I don't know what the other gentlemen are thinking about this.
What Jyrki said here is absolutely true. But on the other hand, I think that the people who are participating in this kind of work, they all share one thing, and they participated because they need this new solution. They need the result of the work, the standard, and therefore I'm quite sure that everybody is ready to negotiate and ready to make compromises and agree upon things. That's one thing. Another obstacle, what I could think, is it's called not invented here, and that means that those people who give the most comments are those who did not participate in the work, and therefore it is our aim to continue the marketing for this work, for this working group, and we try as much as we can so to invite and activate other companies, other organizations, countries, and so on to participate, because if you have been participating yourself, so you probably cannot vote against a proposed solution.
I think that it's a very interesting fact that actually very peaceful countries are the ones that actually have a standard in place. If you look at Finland, Switzerland, Singapore, Sweden had it, and maybe going back to it, but this is mostly, how should I say, peaceful countries or peace-seeking countries. And this is very interesting. I think that one of the obstacles that might come up are the difference in the environment or the requirement for such standard. And this will be related to my next question on how can you address the different climate which need different amount of air, or a different threat from explosion or from nuclear or different enemies. So how do you see the structure of the standard as far as the performance-based versus general guideline, the difference between the different target group or different countries and their requirement and so on? That's the next question, please.
Maybe I could start here, if it's okay.
Sure.
this, of course, is not easy. But on the other hand, as we are not doing a specification with very exact numeric values and saying that it must be exactly this or exactly that, so that kind of mitigates this problem also in that sense that we will write in the standard, for example, in the case of climate, as you mentioned here, Guy. So we will write that the local climatical circumstances and whatever there are must be taken into account, and so that the calculations must be based on this and that. I'll give you an example of about standards. Everybody knows, or almost everybody knows, ISO 9001, which is a management system standard for quality management in various organizations. And the same standard is applicable in a small country, in a big country, in a small organization, in a big organization, in a car manufacturer, and in a say a company that makes sausages. So the most important is the structure. The most important is that everything which is described or defined in the standard is taken into account, and the decisions are based on the process. And similarly, we expect that this standard will describe how the design must be done, not exactly. Or what kind of, maybe I say it in a different way, what kind of things have to be taken into account when a shelter is designed or taken into use or manufactured or maintained. So not really said that it has to be cleaned every Monday between 2 and 3. So but it would probably say that the shelter should be kept clean so that no accidents and no happen. So I hope this answered a little bit your question.
I think that was a great example, the ISO 9001, as it's not, there is no severe or strict content in the ISO 9001, but mostly a guideline and a structure of how to do it. Anyone else want to add to this question? And I think you also answered my next one, which was why should the standard be a guideline, not specification? And that was exactly an answer for that. How would user know based on this guideline which specification they need? Because most countries don't have, and if they have any kind of shelter specification, it's usually classified. And I want to remind, by the way, everybody at this moment, I wanted to say it at the beginning, that this is a declassified discussion. Please refrain from saying anything that it should be classified, and because it's an open discussion. So back to my question, how would user know based on this guideline which specification they need and how to build the specification?
That's a good question. Yes. Right. Because we don't really issue a specification here, so I think we need to refer to any national specifications if they exist. But this is it's not our job here to kind of give that kind of guidance to the reader that he would go and pick up the right specification from his bookshelf. You know, that's not the idea. But what do you think, Pertti?
First of all, I have to ask. There might be some noise in the background. My wife just parked in front of the house, and our dogs go crazy. They start yelling and
Okay.
so please don't let it disturb. Yeah, it's true. how to know which specification should be used. So one clear factor is, of course, an existing national regulation or legislation. So of course the legislation goes always over a standard. So if there is a law in a country, it has to be taken into account. So that's not the standards are voluntary, the law is not. That's one thing clear. Secondly, how I said there are no specifications in some of the countries, not at all. And so therefore they have to do their own specifications, and that's where our standard comes into picture, because it will be written so that when you read it, you understand what you have to specify, how you have to specify it, and what are the factors on which you base your specification. For example, if we talk about number or the amount of air which is needed inside a shelter, so the guideline, the new standard, will give clear explanation how it will be calculated, and then it's up to the people to apply these instructions that are given in the standard. So this is a guidebook that you take in your hand, and then you start drafting the specifications. Of course, as said, taking into account the national requirements.
Very good answer. Please, Peter, I was about to ask you.
In my opinion, I mean, it seemed to be a good way to collect all the regulations or the standards of all nations, but on the other hand, couldn't be a little bit tricky to find out all regulations and which nations has a proper standards and proper conditions. Yes, that's a topic for questions. Thank you.
I think it's very difficult to define what is proper, as it's completely different requirement per country based on the threat analysis, based on their environment, the heat, the humidity, whether it's a resting shelter or working shelter. There's so many different factors that need to be considered. So it's a little bit difficult to consider whether it's correct or wrong. But I wanted to add that the Finnish standard is a public. Actually, most civil defense standards are available to the public, and the Finnish one is available, and you can base the specification on that as well. My next question is, why should peaceful countries adopt such standard, and why they have already in some way in Finland and others? I have already made answer obviously, but I want to hear yours.
It's a very good question.
Trick question. Yes.
Probably a little bit outside the scope of the standardization work, but it doesn't really matter. We have seen it throughout the history that to be attacked doesn't mean that the country would have to be somehow belligerent or not really very friendly and peaceful. I think, in my opinion, every country should be prepared so that in case of a severe disaster, be it then war or be it then a natural disaster or a huge industrial accident. So every country should be prepared, this be it peaceful or not peaceful. So
I think the interesting fact that I heard is that most intelligence agencies are not expecting a war. War can be expected or forecast in some way. You see that the whole deterioration of the region and relationship, and there is some time leading to a war and some actions that you can do to prevent it, like a counter strike or a preventive strike and so on. But accidents, man-made or natural disaster, there you have no time, no response time. And there is American saying, preparation is always better than panic. And if you are not prepared when you cannot be prepared. You cannot get prepared when the emergency happens. Peter, would you like to add anything to this question from your side?
That's clear that not only military actions can be a reason to create and to fulfill that requests for some shelters, but even climate changes. Just now we can see that there are some hurricanes and so on. It means that definitely can be a reason for every country to create those kind of shelters to save lives of civilian personnel.
Maybe I can say something more. That was very well said, Peter. I fully agree with you, and I think it should even be a little bit more so that not only talking about hardened shelters. So I think every country should have a mix of various ways to protect their citizens. And they do. So the shelters are of course only part of this. Then evacuation is another, and then quarantine in case of some biological threats, and so on. So what we are doing here is just one part of the total preparedness that should be available for all citizens of every country.
Yes, you're right. I agree.
And that was a very good point, Peter, about the climate change, and it's a good timing to talk about the climate change because of the international summit. But there are quite a few armies or defense forces around the world that are now considering the climate change as a strategic security risk to the country. And there are several, and again, this is the open discussion, and I don't want to name the countries and so on. A country that has air force bases around the globe, and they're thinking that some of them in the next decade will be flooded, for example, completely. So it's a big. We have a lot to expect, unfortunately, from the climate change in the emergencies. Okay. How would this standard be adopted by governments or defense forces, or is it at all relevant for defense forces?
Oh, certainly, because it's the title is Hardened Protective Shelters, so that covers it all. Though we don't want to address let's say the warlike circumstances so much because of obvious reasons, but the standards should be applicable to all kinds of shelters that are isolating the occupants from unwanted conditions outside. So it doesn't really make a difference between civilian or government or defense forces used. So that should be our goal. Otherwise, if we just restrict it to civil defense, it would not give us the wanted result. Yeah, a shelter is a shelter. So it doesn't really matter who's the user of it. But as long as the purpose of the shelter is to protect against certain impacts of a hazard. The physics is same for all, and the pressure wave is pressure wave. That's how it is. Right.
I kept a difficult question for the last one, and then we move to the audience questions. What are the key factors which the standard should provide users with guidance about?
Would it be feasible at this time to have a look at the scope because we have the scope is approved by the ISO. You, Bertie, have it. I have it also. So we just could show the audience what we have.
The scope.
Yes.
All right.
Would you like to share it?
Yes.
At least you have the at least you have the rights. I think I seem to have them too.
Yeah, I will just a second.
Because that would then show you the key factors as well.
Yep.
And while Bertie is preparing that, anyone who has a question is welcome to write it in the chat or raise his hand. There is a raise hand button in the meeting, and I will give you the option to ask the question. Yes.
No, just a second time.
Either in the approval document that they sent, or
just a second.
In the draft. Well, I can share it if you don't.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I have it here. I have it here now. It's
okay. No, sure. Please
I
share
opened an earlier, later version or earlier version. So just a second.
Oh, shit.
Scope, and now I share it.
Please.
Yeah. All right. I'll make it a little bit larger.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to point out the fact that once the scope has been approved by the ISO organization, we cannot change the contents of it. We can change a few words that make it that could make it more understandable, but the contents as such cannot be changed unless we subject it to a new voting, and this is not something we want to do. Simply because of the schedules.
Okay, so I think it is the second paragraph is the one that's relevant for us, that the international standard intended for use by organization or individual being responsible for the or involved in decision-making, planning, implementation, administration, use, or upkeep of hardened protective shelter. And that is the aim, but do you have anything saying about the different factors?
Well, maybe the first chapter kind of puts it in a nutshell, as you can see. There are the keywords are guidelines for hardened protective shelters in terms of their planning, construction, operation, and maintenance. And it says that it acts as a guidance to any activity or any operation, which that probably has to be changed a little bit, related to hardened protective shelters, and offers help to all relevant stakeholders in their endeavors to protect citizens' assets, important societal functions against harmful effects of hazards, which can be intentionally caused by humans or initiated accidentally or caused through natural conditions. So these are that's the essence, the whole essence of that. Anything else is then a kind of further explanation as to how we go about this.
Yeah, but I think to refine my question a little bit, if we were talking earlier about the amount of air required per person in different environments, if we were talking about the different threat analysis, whether it's CBRN or also TIC, and what kind of TIC is should be considered. TIC, toxic industrial chemicals, and by the way, the EU has a list of over 100,000 different contaminants or hazardous contaminants, 100,000. and it's very difficult to know and to distinguish which one do we need to be concerned with. So these kind of factors, what are the factors that should be included in the standard? I'm happy that I'm making difficult questions.
Yeah.
I think in every work, whatever you start, when you start a capital investment, be it then a shelter or a power plant or an oil distillery or whatever you make in the beginning, you make definitions, you define your goals. So what are you trying to achieve? And in case of a shelter, so you would have to define against which types of threats you are building the shelter. So it's clear that in some countries there are the threat landscape is different than in other countries, and so before you even start thinking about how to build it, so you make your own decision about why you build it. So what is the reason for building it? What are you are, of course, yes, you're going to protect people. Maybe you are trying to protect assets. You're trying to protect material, but the thing is the same. It's you have to withstand, and you have to be able to work, or it has to the system that you're building has to work against certain threats. You define the threats, and then you go to the design phase. Start designing the shelter itself, and in every phase, when you follow the design, the guidebook, so there are things that are listed that would have to be taken into account. And if you're living in a country where the ground is mostly sand, so you couldn't think of digging or drilling holes in the or excavating a hole in a bedrock, like in Scandinavia, for example, and vice versa. So there you would have to think of different solutions. But the basic requirements, so what is needed for a shelter, so the capabilities and capacities that are needed to make the shelter functioning, so they are principally the same. Not really depending so much upon the what could cause the threats. So we maybe in case of a shelter, when you go to the physical level, think of the physics, what's behind it. So you don't think whether a pressure wave, for example, is it caused by wind? Is it caused by an explosion of industrial explosion, or is it caused by a bomb? So it doesn't really matter, actually. What matters is the system that you're building, is it able to mitigate the threat that exists? This is
very good answer. Thank you very much. Before we are running a little bit out of time, and we want to have some maybe questions from the audience. Peter, would you like to add anything before to conclude?
I think that Bertie said everything very clear, because we cannot create something, some document which would be able to cover every differences between countries, between main requirements. And I think that basic requirements depend on physics should be in this document, but it's my opinion.
Maybe some chemistry.
Thank you. Of course, chemistry, of course, too.
Jyrki, anything to add, or should we go to questions?
No, I think that's those answers covered it all. So it's again, because it's not a specification, so we cannot add the 100,000 EU classified gases into the standard. So we may want to refer to that list some point of the standard, but not included in the standard, of course.
Well, Tommy Rusk asked, is the standard addressing individual sheltering problems like CO2, noise, ventilation volume, human behavior in shelter? I think in some way you covered it, but I think, Tommy, the answer to your question was already discussed, that this will talk about the factors that need to be considered without going into the details and the number and so on. CO2 is a very good example of something that needs to be addressed, but again, the threshold of the CO2, the levels that cannot exceed, that should be individually decided by the country or by the user of the standard.
Right, you are.
Very good question, Tommy. Thank you. Mr. Pekka Kurenius, I hope I pronounced it correctly. Is a shared technical classification of protective capabilities? Sorry? Is a shared technical classification of protective capabilities such as CBRNE in detail planned based on current threat analysis, such as the Finnish Civil Defense S1, S6 classification based on reflected shockwave loads? I think it's there's a very similar question. It's going into the details of the shock load and different levels of specification. The Finnish specification talk about the different S-class of shelters, but this is it's a specific case, and the standard, as pretty well put it before, has to address everything and have to give us the structure of what factors we need to look at. Panel, any other words?
As the first draft, that means the very early draft that we made in the proposal phase, so there no classification is presented, no classes, and I don't know if it comes through during the work. So of course we have to discuss this then. My feeling is that this classification of shelters is a very national thing, and the reason for that is that, as I said earlier, so the threats are different in each country, and the ways of addressing the threats are different. So, and not only talking about shelters. So some countries may think that evacuation might be much easier than to put people in the shelters. But if you, for example, live in Luxembourg, so where would you evacuate people? Or if you live in the rural area in Germany, so in some places this is not possible, and vice versa. In Finland, there is a lot of countryside and forest where you put people for the time of threats. So this means that how the country is addressing these threats and the protection against these threats, so varies very much. I don't personally think it would be a good idea to try to create this kind of international classes. But Jyrki, you're deeper in this business than I, so maybe you.
Well, I have to agree with you. It's the classification here in Finland is based on completely different idea as it would be in some other countries. So making it a kind of guideline in standard is probably not a good idea. So it has to be left. The decision has to be left to the people who apply the standard, not in the standard. No, I would think so.
I think Pertti also added another important point about the evacuation ability and so on. And I think the way I look at it, civil defense is a national strategic asset for the defense of the country. And why is that? Is because the people that are supposed to defend the country and to risk their lives and do all this, all their operation to defend the country, need to know that their families and their loved ones are safe and they are secured and they are taken care of, and then they have the peace of mind to go and do the work they need to do. And if they don't have that, then that is the problem. How can you leave your family behind when you know it's vulnerable? And today, it's the front line is the home front. It's not the old-time battles that they go in ships and go to the other island and fight there. So they need to know that their families are safe. And very good. Then I think we have a personal question from Tommy. Please.
Yes, hello. Good evening and greetings from Abu Dhabi.
Oh,
hello, Tommy.
Thank you.
Yes, all good here. This might be a little bit the same question as before, but obviously my interest in because of our business is on the area of CBR and detection and automated shelters.
Mm-hmm.
Does this standard cover at any level any guidelines on that? Let's say that your threat scenario is one of the main threat scenarios is related to CBRN. Does it then have some kind of tools or guidelines that how should it be protected against those threats and how they would be connected if you want to be automatically saved or something like that?
Now, would you be referring to situational awareness or?
Yes,
yeah.
That would be the one of the keywords. Yes.
Right. I think we should include the situational awareness into the scope. It's not particularly addressed at the moment, but that is, of course, very important, particularly in any operational shelters, command posts and stuff like that. So it's let's keep that in mind, because I can't remember, but if we have in the draft, if we have a separate paragraph for situational awareness.
I can't remember, but I know that we both agreed that there should be some kind of a situational awareness system connected to each and every shelter, so that people inside would know what is the situation outside, and that centrally the authorities, national authorities, could know what is the situation inside, in case it's not possible to physically visit or go and look at the shelter. We'll mark this up and we will.
Yeah, that's a
I
good
think
point.
we should discuss this definitely.
It's already a very good webinar when we can raise a point that may be added to the standard.
Yeah, that we have. Yeah, right.
So thank you very much, Tommy, for bringing that up.
Good.
Okay, thanks.
Talking about sensors and some systems of awareness, it could be good, maybe, my proposal to cooperate with the detector and identification and monitoring panel within JCBR and CDG, and contact them. Maybe that would be some decision which would be beneficial and helpful for creation of this, because of military has, of course, some requirements, of course, and then some results how to solve this problem with the detectors and monitoring situation which is outside of shelters. Of course, there are some procedures which would be helpful, doing better entrance into and what to do before the entrance to this shelter, and maybe it would be another part of coordination between military and this ICO. That's my proposal.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Peter. Any other question from anyone from the attendees?
Right. There is
Yes.
There is a question from Pekka Kirenius in the chat. There was an earlier question.
Yeah.
I think we talked about the classification, the S1, S6.
No, I meant the one before that.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Some Finnish and European civil defense shelter design parameters date back to the 60s, especially for habitation, life support subsystem. Will there be an international review or an update reflecting current status of research? There are, of course, national variations.
Well, the basic idea is when this kind of standardization working group is started and the work starts for a standard, so we experts are invited from all around the world to participate. And now there is no way we could force each and every country to send someone there, but we hope that we will have not only from all countries, but also from all stakeholder groups. That means the authorities and the industry and the construction and so on, so that we could have the widest view towards this business. And then what comes to the latest research results, and so we just have to rely that the people who are participating in this work, that they have kept themselves up to date, and so that we have not discussed whether we should do an organized kind of survey about this, what all there is, but I dare say that the people that are represented in this working group, that they do represent the highest level or high level of understanding about the problems we are talking about. But as I said, your question, will there be an international review or update? I haven't discussed it, if it would be such as an organized one, but anyway, we will see what there is.
I think that should be related to what you mentioned as the structure, and that's kind of answer all those questions that were about the different parameters, mine and others as well, that it's not a specific review of the status of the shelter. It's what needs to be done as far as maintenance. How often does the shelter need to be reviewed? Or maybe even, as you said, because you have to make it very general, is that you need to define how often the shelter should be checked and maintenance, and not necessarily that it will be defined in the standard, but it will be defined that this is an issue that the user of the standard need to be addressed and to decide. Kind of like the ISO. The ISO 9001 does not tell you exactly how often you need to do so and so. It tells you that you need to decide how often you do it and how you do it, and to define it and to follow what you decided. Am I right, Pertti?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly, correct. And a standard like this, when it will be published, so at the end of the document there will be a bibliography. There will be a list of documents and list of books and whatever there are publications that we are referring to, and those are then additional information about the topic. So we will, and one thing we will do here during this process is we will check what kind of national regulations and standards there might be that we are not aware at the moment. So to if possible have to take them into account and as use them also as basis for the work. We also will have a careful look at the military standards such as NATO standards related to protection of assets and forces.
Collective protection.
Yeah.
Okay, we are running out of time, so I want to check once again if there is any question from anyone. I think this was a very interesting. There was a Tommy also asked about the timelines, and I think you missed earlier discussion by Perty that the timeline of the standard is within a year time to issue a draft. This is the current deadlines, but we hope that the deadline will be beaten and the result will be earlier than that. The current deadline is within 1 year to issue a draft, get some comments, get responses, and then within a year after to publish the standard. So that's the timeline. I think that was an interesting discussion and gave us a good idea of how the standard will be built or structured and what will we gain from the standard at a later point when it will be issued. And I think also we got some good feedback from the audience about, for example, the situational awareness. And thank you, Yari, as well. And I hope that we will have further panels like this about the standard and other. We are planning, and please follow us to do about every few weeks or every month to do another webinars on different subject to hear different opinion and broaden our perspective and knowledge. And with such a good speakers and interesting people with us knowledge and experience, it's great.
Can I say something still before we leave, Guy?
Sure, please. This is why you're here.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure to be present in this webinar, and I'm really happy to see that such a big number of persons. I see that there are 27 attendees additionally to the presenters, so that so many people have been interested in this topic, and I want to encourage you to take the next step and not just be interested but participate. Please, you're welcome, and this is an open invitation to participate this working group. So anybody can join the working group. You only have to contact your national standardization body and inform that you or your organization is willing to participate in this work, and you will get from Guy the necessary facts, the work number, for example, of this topic, and just tell that you're interested, and they will tell you how you can, and you are very much welcome to join us. We need lots of different opinions. We need a lot of knowledge, experience, expertise, and I think that the best such expertise you find amongst the people who really work day by day with these shelters. So welcome. I hope to see you later in this working group.
That's very good, because it makes our work easier. The more we have expertise, the less we have to work.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you also for my behalf. That's been very interesting. Interesting 1.5 hours, and it kind of denotes the fact that this standard is required, because we have so many people attending this and being interested in our offering.
And Pedro, would you like to say that?
If I may, from my point of view, it was very interesting to see the different point and different positions than the military positions, just only military positions, because to be honest, we are involved more or less in the NATO standardizations. So, and it is much easier to create such standards than to create some civilian standards like you are doing, like you are trying. So I hope that I will be in the position when I can help you, even so that more, or not more, some NATO standards are classified. Thank you very much for being invited. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
Thank you for joining us. do we have time maybe with Tommy Rusk? Would you like to go online to ask your question about the timeline to make sure that I'm not getting it incorrectly?
Sure. The panel already partly answered the question. It's the standard doesn't take any point of view on structural matters. So I was answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so thank you, everybody. If you have any further questions, you are welcome to email me at any time, and I can direct it to the right person and to give you a more professional answer. And I hope to see you here in the next webinars, which will be published on our website and LinkedIn account as well.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Guy, for organizing this event.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Bye.
See you next time. Thank you.